just briefly go through a PowerPoint on travel photography. Then we'll do another set of a PowerPoint presentation with a series of our shots from our recent trip to France and Italy. And then lastly, go back through some specific photos there, and Phyllis will explain some of what caused her to take those photos. So that is what we're going to do. Yeah, let's see. If I can get this up. And are you seeing anything? There it is. Took a minute to come up. All right, we're there. All right. Let's see. Okay, there we go. When we talk about photography and travel, Phyllis and I were talking about this, and we said we're not really travel photographers, but we love to travel and we love photography. So it's more of photography while traveling than travel photographers. Travel photographers go to a specific site and look for specific things and sell their stuff, but we just enjoy traveling, and at the same time we like to take some pictures as we go. So when you're traveling, there's many different ways you can do it. You can travel with purpose, with a specific place that you want to go, or you can just go where the road takes you. Or maybe it's a dream vacation, an anniversary trip or something like that. As far as planning for travel, there's lots of sites that you can look at to try to find places that you'd love to go to. We kind of have our own list of some of our dream places that we'd like to hit at some point in time, and if the deals are right and the time is right, we just take off. As far as booking flights, actually, I'll talk about travel deals first. One of the best ways for us to find deals, we use Scott's Cheap Flights a lot. Clark Howard Travel Deals is similar. But if you're looking for flight deals, you can get some amazing deals sometimes. Just they're having sales, whatever. Our trip to France, just going through my emails, and Scott's Cheap Flights sent a notice that said flights to Nice, and I said to Phyllis, "Hey, the flights to Nice are cheaper than a flight to California right now. Why don't we go to France for vacation?" And so you can get some amazing deals that way. And then you just get on Google Flights or one of the other site places, and you can find you can look for the times and the airlines that will meet those deals. Get a little bit of delay here, but there are lots of photography sites to check out. So once we decided we were going to go someplace like France, I'm going to get on Google and look at some of the different sites, location.net, the whole world is a playground.com, the Wandering Lens, or a few of those, where you can, photographers have listed some of the things that they've taken pictures of along the way. You can find a lot of good background information on what are the key sites to see, what are the things that you can't miss, type of thing. Talk to fellow photographers, fellow travelers. Back when bookstores were were open and more popular, we'd go to Barnes and Noble, go to the travel section, and just flip through everything that had to do with the location that we were headed for. But I also say we look for unique places to shoot, not just the places everybody goes or the shots that everybody else gets, because there are those. There's those things that you can't miss. Like if you're going to Rome, you've got to have a picture of the Colosseum, or but there are a lot of beautiful places beyond just the standard places to see. Exotic can be found everywhere. And you don't even have to go far. So when we talk about travel, we've taken some European vacations, but there's a lot of places just around Georgia that you can hit and see and find some great shots. There's no shortage of beauty everywhere. It really is opening our eyes to be able to see it and to look beyond the obvious. What's everyday to us can be amazingly beautiful to others, and vice versa. It's interesting when we have our club photography contests, but there's international photography contests, and if you entered a picture of someplace in France, say Siena, that's kind of everyday to a lot of those judges. But something here is completely different to them. It's unique to them because they don't see that too often. So there is beauty everywhere. And when my family first came down here, they were absolutely amazed by the kudzu. We think kudzu is ugly. It's everywhere. We see it all the time. But to them, it was something amazing, and so they would take pictures of it. When you're traveling, travel light. Phyllis, Phyllis doesn't always travel light. She's got a big backpack she carries on her back when she travels. But what do you use?
As far as his lens and that kind of thing, I usually take just about everything that I own and I carry it. And I have a backpack that works specifically for the lenses that I have. I carry my Canon 5D Mark V, and then with that I have a 100 to 400 because I love to shoot things very tight at times. And then there are times that we go places that have wildlife, and I love to shoot, wildlife, and so that lens has to come with me. And then I have a standard walk around lens that's a 24 to 105, and then I have a wide angle just for landscaping, and I also like to use it for distortion. I like to get down low and distort things and just do odd stuff with that wide angle lens. I really love that. And then I use something that's called a platypod, and some of you guys might have heard of it. It's just basically like a little plate that you can take the top of your tripod head and mount it to the platypod, and it will sit literally anywhere and hold up the largest lens. They come in two different sizes. But really the small one will hold a fairly large lens, and that will get me into places like churches and sometimes museums, because they'll say, no tripods, but that little platypod is not a tripod, and it will sit just about anywhere because it's only about the size of, I'm trying to think, smaller than a mouse pad, way smaller than a mouse pad, maybe 4 by 4 inches, something like that. And it's just fabulous for carrying to places when you're on a plane, you don't want to carry all that equipment, and that thing is just great for that. So that's what I carry, and then Justin will tell you what he carries.
For me, my main lens is just a walk around lens, which is a zoom lens. I've got a couple of them, but I have a Tamron 18 to 200, which gets me a very wide range of telephoto. So you can get in close, you can get wide. I usually pack a wide angle with me as well, and I've also got a 18 to 70, which it's a 2.8, so I will often use that if we're walking around and going inside buildings, because it's better for lower light. So, but as a rule, it's the walk around lens that I do most of my shooting with when I'm traveling, just because it's light, and usually weight makes a big difference wherever you are. Phyllis mentioned the platypod. A travel tripod's nice to take, but if your tripod or your equipment's too heavy, you probably are going to end up leaving it behind in the hotel rooms or wherever, because you don't want to carry it around. Batteries, lens cleaners, memory cards. We've learned the hard way to switch off memory cards fairly often, because you lose one, you might lose a day of your trip or two, but if you've got a week's worth of photos on a memory card and it corrupts or you lose it, you lose most of your trip, and that's pretty important. And the other key thing for us has been rain shields. We'll find whenever we're out, you never know what the weather's going to be. And just that little plastic, they're cheap, they roll up, you can put them in your pocket, but they'll cover your whole camera and lens, and they're great for those rainy days, because we generally don't let the rain stop us.
That's true, we shoot in all weather.
Timing, we talked to, when Bill says we shoot in all weather, we have, and the right light might be needed for certain locations, but really weather for better and worse, whether it's a snowstorm. We were up in Canada in May, and the top picture there was it was snowing away in May. You just go with the flow and you shoot whatever you have. A dense fog, sometimes a fog can really add to a picture. So rainy day, rain will really highlight the colors and make things stand out in ways that you might not otherwise get.
Yeah, if I could say anything here, I would tell you to get out. Absolutely get out when it's raining, when it's foggy. Don't let that stop you, because you're going to find your pictures go to a whole new level if you'll get out and shoot in bad weather. Don't wait for the sun to come out to get out.
And you'll probably see a few of those from our trip as well, where we were out in all sorts of weather. The other thing is it's always good to check of what's going on in the area where you're at, for two reasons. Sometimes a festival or something that's going on you want to visit and see and view and walk through. The other thing is sometimes those things can really impact your ability to stay or find a hotel room. We were traveling once, and there was a NASCAR race going on, and we had to drive forever to be able to find a hotel.
Yeah, I think we had to go 100 miles out of the way, and it was 1 a.m. before we found an absolute dump to stay in, and we just prayed that the roaches were not going to take us off. So yeah, make sure you know where you're going and what's going on around you.
I titled this one, "Say Hello, It Never Hurts to Ask." That's maybe delayed here. There it is. Okay. People really do like to share, and not only ask if you can take their picture, and Phyllis is great at that. You know, the couple up at the top who are playing their instrument, she just asked if they mind if we took pictures of them, and they said, sure, no problem. We generally would send them something, but people also like to share just what about their town and about their area. So if you're talking to somebody, they'll often give you suggestions on things to see, where to go, places to photograph, and that's often what we'll do. When we were in France, there was the Van Gogh presentation that's going on in Atlanta now. Was that it was in one of the towns there, and somebody suggested it to us, and it was one of the highlights of our trip. So, if you are taking pictures of people and you talk to them, get their names and emails, a lot of them will, and send them a copy of the pictures.
Mhm.
Go with the flow. If it's beautiful, there'll be tour buses, crowds, selfie sticks, and photographers. And we've experienced a lot of that along the way. Some of the beautiful places in Canada, the tour buses will come up, the crowds will swarm the Lake Louise in this case, they'll swarm out there with their selfie sticks and their cameras, crowd in front of you, push you out of the way, and you wait 10 minutes, they hop on the bus and they're on to the next place. You just have to go with the flow with with most of those, and in some situations, you know, while everybody's crammed up in front of the lake there, you can walk around and get some great pictures of the mountains in behind them because they're looking the opposite directions.
You learn to clone.
Yeah.
Sure.
I put in a quote by Chesterton there that says, "The traveler sees what he sees, the tourist sees what he has come to see." And that's true. Tourists will come to see a specific spot or a specific location, but as a traveler, if you're watching, if you're looking around you, there's always stuff to see. There's stuff all around you that's beautiful, and opportunities to shoot. Challenges only make your photos more valuable to you. Just a note then, to experience the place beyond the lens, put down the camera for a while and just enjoy. We were hiking in the Olympic National Park, and some beautiful waterfalls there. Could have sat and took pictures all day, but it was special just to put the camera down for a minute and sit there and just experience and listen to the water and smell all the smells. It's important that you can experience and enjoy just beyond the lens itself. They embrace culture stories. People, there's a point that says, shoot what pleases you, what you're feeling at the moment. Let your photos tell the story of your adventures. And for us, that's kind of what we like to do. We like to just experience it, and then a lot of our shots are for memories. We're not shooting for competitions or any of that kind of stuff. Sometimes we use them later on in competitions, but we're shooting for the memories, shooting what we're feeling, and shooting our experiences and special times.
How did you get above those rowboats there? Oh, behind them. Looks like you're out in the water.
No, there was another dock just right next to that one, so was able to do that. Looks like we've got, there we go. To get lost on purpose, that's another thing that we just enjoy doing, getting off the beaten path. We'll hit a road and say, I wonder where this road takes us, or do we have time to stop here? For me, what's around the next bend whenever I'm hiking? I've drugged Phyllis, unfortunately for her, all over the place sometimes because I want to see what's I'm the next band. But it's fun to see how the locals live, just, you know, what's going on in the different towns. Be safe, but don't be afraid to travel off the beaten path a little bit. Camille Pizarro says, "Blessed are those who see beautiful things in humble places where others see nothing." And there are some definitely a lot of beauty where people would not expect to see it. As far as light and times of day, get up early, beat the crowds, but you also get the best light. Stay up late, evening and night photography are good times to shoot. And when the light's bad outside, shoot indoors. It's a good time if you're wandering the streets in France to shoot the churches and some of the places like that when the light is really hard. But use the light you have. Sometimes you can find things when you're shooting in different ways: silhouettes, shadows, highlights, different things that will accentuate your shots. Travel slow. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that's given us. That's a quote by Tolkien. There'll never be enough time to see everything, and we've found that too. We're traveling, and man, I wish I could have spent 3 more days here, whatever. Just an excuse to go back sometime. But don't be afraid to stop and hang out for a while to see what maybe the light's going to change or what's going on in that particular location. Compositional notebook, and I'm not going to talk too much about composition. We've had lots of conversations about that, and we'll see some of the pictures when Phyllis talks too. But looking at things from different angles, different approaches. Watch your backgrounds. Make sure there's nothing out there that you don't have to clone out later. It's easier to take a step over than to have to clone later on. Safety when you're traveling. I think it'll come up on your screen in a second here, but proper clothing is important depending on where you're going. Kind of be prepared. When you're in France, walking on cobblestone streets, having flat shoes and having shoes with a grip, especially because it's amazing how slippery cobblestones are when you're walking. Water. I'm always forgetting to take water with me, but it's an essential if you're out for long periods of time. Trust your instincts. It's nice if you're going with somebody else. It's always good to have somebody kind of keeping an eye on the area where you're shooting. And watch your feet, not just the viewfinder. It's amazing how brave you can be when you've got a camera in front of your face. And see Phyllis out on the edge of Horseshoe Bend there. She would probably never get that close to the edge of the cliff without the camera, but just be careful. I say cliff edges, slippery rocks, rotten boards, critters. We were in Nova Scotia, and I was not very careful. I was standing on a rock that was a little bit slippery, and I slid right off into the ocean there, and held both cameras way over my head. I managed to get out of there, kind of soggy, but I said, the cameras are safe. A lot of times, if we're not careful and we're not watching what we're doing, and it's easy to do when you're shooting, just be careful, be cautious, so you don't end up like Phyllis.
How far away was the train?
Well, those tracks were Dad. There's no training to go on that track. I don't shoot on track.
No, in
Can't hear
fact,
you, Phyllis.
I was just saying that those tracks haven't been used in years and years. There's no train that goes on that. I don't shoot on tracks at all.
it's illegal, and B, it's just not safe.
No, it's not safe.
Yeah.
Never do it.
And lastly, just there's really no excuses. If I only had this camera lens, or if I had it's amazing how good, we were talking earlier, how great shots you can get with an iPhone. And when we were mentioning equipment, I forgot to mention the phone, because it's there, it's in your pocket, it's always with you. So even if you're not carrying your camera around with you, your phone is there. Don't let weather be an excuse to not take pictures. Time and money. Travel happens every day on your way to work, dropping off the kids, whatever you're doing. Some of the best shots that you can take are maybe the ones only a few miles down the road. And then lastly, if you're out there shooting things will happen for you. If you're not out there, you'll only hear about it. So hit the road. It's good to have an end to the journey, an end to journey towards, but it's the journey that matters in the end. And for us, that's really the key. It's what we remember as we're going. So now we're going to take you to France.
And I think this presentation is 19 minutes long. I hope it's not too boring to you. But it's hard when you have two people that shoot to narrow down something to 10 minutes when you have literally thousands upon thousands of photos. And I tried my best to pull out ones that I thought you might be interested in, things that are a little bit more unusual. And then at the end of it, I'm going to talk a little bit about just some of them. And we're going to go back through, and whenever you see one that you might want us to talk about more, just say stop. So turn on your volume and just ask us to stop once this is over with, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that photograph.
Sorry, my mouse isn't cooperating with me. There we go. It looks like Zoom is not necessarily keeping up with our with PowerPoint here. So I think what we'll do is stop the automatic run through and just run through the pictures individually. That way we can stop them. Because Zoom is skipping a few of them. So hold on.
You want me to talk about all of them?
No, we'll just. So apologies, we'll take you through them, and I'll try to make sure that they come up on the other screen so we know that they're actually sharing here. So I think that one was up there before, but you can talk about Nice for a minute while we're going through these if you want.
I don't know how many of you have been to Nice, France. It's absolutely gorgeous on the Mediterranean. My favorite part of just about any city is the old town. And you'll see, I think the ones that are coming up here are just aerial views where you walk up to the top of a long, long, long flight of steps that takes you up to a cliff, and it overlooks the Mediterranean, overlooks the sea. This shot here was actually shot from that vantage point. I saw a man down there. He did have a red shirt on. I know a lot of people like to try to find somebody that has red on, and I just did get lucky. I didn't change the color of that. And that was shot from there. So one of the things that I really, really love to do is get a lot higher and change the vantage point. I will climb as far as I need to, or I will lay down on my belly, or I will lay on my back. And I don't really care how many people are standing around or any of that. If you want your photographs to reflect you and have a little bit of a different take, you have to put in the work. And so that's, there were a few other people on the beach higher up there, and I just cloned them out and left him.
As we're going through
Can you bring that, blow that up to get, because we've seen your whole screen, including the thing on the side.
Yeah, I can. Well, it's jumping on me again. Let's see.
Perfect.
That better?
Much better. Thank you.
So as we're going through, if you see something that you want to talk about, just say stop, and we'll talk about that photograph.
Did you want to say something about this one?
Yeah, I'll tell you about this one. This was taken early in the morning. We were on our way to breakfast. This was in the old town of Nice. And I love when people are dressed a little differently, or they're elderly, or they're just, they're just unique in some way. And he happened to be reading a newspaper, which I don't see very much of anymore. You don't see a lot of people reading a newspaper. And the light coming out of this little shop here caught my eye. And so I just took the shot.
France is full of little cafes and places to, just really unique places to eat. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing to see. This one was
That picture you got up there now looks like Moscow.
It does. There was a Russian Orthodox church in Nice, and because it was kind of unique, we stopped and wandered a few miles to take a look at it. Markets everywhere in France. It's a wonderful experience. They're selling their produce and all sorts of goods. It was almost every town we went, there was a market going on at some point in time, and it was fun to experience.
And all of that up front is lavender that you see. They're selling lavenders everywhere. Mm-hmm.
Talking about perspective.
You on your back on the ground with this one? Wow,
Actually, the buildings were tall enough there that I didn't have to lay on my back. I just tried to get it to stand in the center and shoot straight up.
that almost make you dizzy looking at it.
It does, doesn't it? The beach in Nice is fairly rocky. We were there in November, so it was not as crowded as it would be in the summer. But in the summer, there isn't a spot along that beach. And Nutella, it's everywhere.
I thought you photographed it for those 3 outlets.
They were kind of unique too. The old town of Nice has got lots of little alleyways and walkways. So when we flew to Nice, Nice was our base for the first 4 days. We walked around and wandered around things to see there, but we took buses to some of the other areas around. Monaco, Monte Carlo was it's really not very far. It's about 15-20 miles. It was about an hour bus ride to get over there along the cliffs. It is one of the richest cities in the world. And it's independent. Monaco is its own country. Full of large yachts and cruise boats. And at the palace, there is a changing of the guard there. You wanted to say something about this one?
Timing is everything in photography. I must have taken 15 or 20 shots trying. There was a big pole right behind him, and I wanted him right smack in the middle to where he covered the pole. And I had to sit perfectly, keep my camera in perfect alignment with that, with crowds kind of pushing against me. And it was crazy. And finally, pow, I finally achieved that there. So be patient and wait, and don't walk away, because I have walked away from something that I was trying to get and regretted it. So just be patient with your photography and stand there until you get the shot you want.
And if somebody pushes on you, just elbow.
You can see the pole there between the 2 guards, or the drone people drumming there.
This is the church where Princess Grace was, her grave is. And it's fun just to play around sometimes, so you're waiting for a picture. Oops. Come on. This was Phyllis playing with your lens, zooming in and out, right?
Yeah, that's just multiple exposures. I think that's maybe, I'm trying to figure out, maybe 3 different exposures as I was twisting the lens in the front, and that gave that effect.
That's the big casino in Monte Carlo. You've seen James Bond movies.
Can't barely, I'm gonna zoom in.
Pardon me?
No, that somebody just came in there.
So
Okay.
did y'all win enough to pay for the trip?
No. We decided not to gamble at all there, so
Okay,
we got a picture delayed. Yeah.
bye.
So the next day we went to a small town called Ez, also along the coastline, and it was, one thing about France is almost all of their towns are on top of hills. So it was a rainy day. We heard about it as being a cute town with lots of little shops and stuff, and we really didn't spend much time in the shops. But you can see some of the streets along here, and what ended up being more of a highlight for us was at the very top of the hill or the mountain was a cactus garden with some awesome views. I think it's coming up. And we spent a lot of time up here in this cactus garden. It was a misty rain the whole time. We had our umbrellas and our rain shields. And I apologize. It looks like we're getting a bit of delay just in our communication back and forth with Zoom here. So.
That looks like a helicopter shot.
Yeah, you're pretty high up there when you get some of those hills. Amongst the cactus were a lot of statues in this garden too, which is pretty unique.
We're gonna see that one in the competition this week?
I know, unless Phyllis decides to enter it, I don't think so.
So how'd that taste?
And you can see the sky even cleared up for us a little bit there. Actually, I think. So after leaving Nice, we headed out to the Provence area. We started off at a small town called St. Paul de Vence. On the way there, we were driving along and there was a cemetery on the side of the road. And like we do, we said, stop, pull over, gotta get a picture of that. So, looks a little different than some of the ones that we see around here as far as cemeteries go. So it was literally built in tiers on the side of the hill. The next picture coming up is the town of St. Paul de Vence. And you can see a lot of the buildings are stone. And I couldn't help but
Whoa, danger.
take a picture of Phyllis taking a picture. I like to catch her when she's in some of those unique shots or unique places, but yeah, she got brave and walked out along the ledge to try to get some of the pictures of the buildings there.
And I'm completely afraid of heights, Sean. I'm serious. I mean, I go into a sweat. So even seeing myself up there, I'm like, I can't believe I did that.
But that's what she was taking when she was standing there. So. Yeah, sometimes the camera will make her a lot braver than.
Looks like these houses are real old.
They definitely are, yeah. And I don't know what they were there.
I had no idea what that was about. I was just walking the street and turned and there it was. And I have no idea. So I guess I could enter that one for statues too, maybe.
we spent the morning in St. Paul de Vence, and then drove on to a place called Moustier, where we spent the night. There's a deep gorge that runs through that area of Provence. We decided, Phyllis was driving, we decided we probably didn't want to drive along the edge of the cliffs there because they don't have guardrails along there either. So we just took an alternate route to Moustier. The highlight of Moustier is this little tiny church that sits up on the top of a hill of, I don't know how many steps, but just, but we walked up there in the evening and got some pictures back down of the city and in the little church itself. And you can see the pathway heading up there. It's just rock steps carved literally into the side of the cliffs.
That was inside the church. It was pitch black, and that was the only light they had, literally. That's part of the path.
And then as it got darker, the city lit up a little bit and it got a nice glow in the streets there. The next day we woke up and traveled on our, we're going to hit 2 or 3 little cities, but along the way we passed the lavender fields. They were not in bloom. They were in bloom in August, and by November there wasn't much left, but you got some beautiful lines all the same there. It was extremely windy that day as well. So there's Phyllis blowing in the wind. We mentioned off the beaten path. Valençon was a little town. We were driving through and somebody had to take a potty stop. And so we decided we'd stop there. We found a little bakery and went in there. They didn't have bathrooms. They said, you have to go way down to the center of the town. So we walked our way through the town itself and found it was really a beautiful little place. It was a lot to see as we wandered. So you never know sometimes where your road will take you, but there's lots to see and beauty along the way. I think we're frozen. There we are. And of course, lavender shops everywhere.
How do you manage to get so many shots with no people in it at all?
That's a good question. I don't know. With
The time of year that you go to any place has a huge bearing on tourism and that sort of thing. Europe, your best time really to go is October, September, October, November. November starts getting kind of chilly, especially at night, but the tourists there's just not that many. And we prefer going during those times. You go, like he said, to Canada during peak season, and you can't, it's just almost impossible unless you get up before everybody else does, and then you stop by 9 o'clock because everybody's out at that point.
the next town we hit was Roussillon, and it was also it looked like a little red cliff, basically, as we were driving up to it. It was like seeing Georgia red clay in the middle of France, but
Mhm.
On the top of this little mound of clay was a little village where we had lunch and spent some time taking some pictures as well. Had some cute buildings there. And every village you go to has a little church. We saw lots of churches. From Rousselon, we went on to another town called Gord. The ES is always silent on these towns. Gord was, again, lots of rocky buildings. In a few minutes, we'll see how it looks from the outside of town. Again, a beautiful church.
Did you stay overnight in any of these small towns?
Not in these. We just spent a few hours wandering around. Our next stop was it's called Le Sur de la Sorgue, and oops. And we made that sort of our next base, and then did some side trips from there. It was just a beautiful countryside, and as you get up on top of some of these hills, you can see a long ways out there with the vineyards and the whatever else they're growing out there. And just about every place you go, there are some people who will speak English. So we had no problems whatsoever with the language. I know some French from growing up in Canada, but not enough really to carry on a long conversation, but enough to understand. We didn't really have any issues with language, other than they were not great fans of Americans necessarily. What's that?
Oh, I thought that was.
Yeah.
I think right.
You
You gotta head of it.
Taking a moment to think of. That's Gord from the outside. You can see it's built right up on a cliff there. We were on our way out of the town, and the storm clouds were billowing up right about then. We had about 3 minutes before it came down and just poured. And then we drove from there into the rain to Ile-sur-la-Sorgue, which is the Ile is French for island, and it was literally an island in the middle of a number of rivers.
Were you in France during COVID?
No, this was 2019, so it was before COVID.
Just before we got back home, and that hit, what was it, March? We were there in October, November, and then it hit the following March.
Yeah, January, March.
January, March, yeah.
You know, you don't see many cars or people, even the people that live there. What about the vehicles? Are there no vehicles or bikes, or is anything going on there? Is everybody in the house asleep?
That we found with a lot of the smaller towns, well, you can see this alleyway. That's not really an alleyway, that's a street. So unless you have a very small car, you're not going down that road. In the city of Arles, which we'll hit in a few minutes, Phyllis can tell you her experience of driving into Arles.
Yeah. We were in this little, you're actually supposed to park on the outside. They're only big enough. I mean, these towns are ancient, and you may find a few motorcycles, but mostly it's just foot traffic, maybe a bicycle here and there. But we were told that we could come into the city part, and so we did, and the streets were very, very narrow, to the point that you had to pull in your mirrors to keep from hitting the walls. And the GPS told me just, to go straight down this little tiny road, I guess, and the buildings were literally on both sides. And when I got to the end of it, the building in front was so close and it was so narrow that I could not even turn in either direction. And I had to back up with my daughter walking behind me, Jeff in front of me, and I was inch by inch having to back up. Oh, I don't know, maybe
It's about a football field length
a
back
football,
through,
yeah, back
through this narrow
back
alleyway.
that car up through the alleyway. So we learned our lesson. Even if they said you can't, you could come in, we were like, no, we're parking on the outside of the city, and then you have to drag your luggage and walk as far as you needed to get to your hotel, whether that's a mile or a half mile or 2 miles or 3 miles or whatever. You drag your luggage. So it's a very different world.
This was a shot from inside a very ornate church in this little town of Ile-sur-le-Soir.
And that's how I got that shot. There was already a photographer there, standing where I wanted to stand at, and I was like, okay. And I just asked him if I could sit down in front of him, and I pulled out the little platypod that I had, because I didn't have a tripod anyways. And I just thought, well, I want to get a different vantage point, and I shot from literally the ground up.
When what a beautiful shot too.
Thank you.
This is just one of the little rivers, canals that run around the town. Where was this?
That was in that same, I don't remember the name of the town. I like to shoot at night. I noticed this little shop. It looked very antique-y like. And so I just made sure that I had my camera out when I went out to dinner. When I came back through, I didn't have a tripod or anything. I just set my settings so that it would meter for the light. I don't add more light than what's there. I just want what is there and let everything else fall into shadows. And I don't mind, I don't think anything is blocked up there, but I actually don't mind things being blocked up. I know some, if it comes to a competition, if something's blocked up in the shadows, they don't like that, but I don't really mind it. And this one is when we were coming back from dinner. Jeff was standing in the doorway, and that's actually my shadow there. And I just liked that it was completely dark where he was standing at, and there was a street light behind me. And I saw my shadow on the ground, and he was looking back because he's always watching out after me. And he knew obviously that it was dark outside and didn't want me outside like that in a strange town. And so he opened the door, and I waited, and I caught that shot of him.
And then we have a few shots just from the market there. That was one of the towns that had a full market, and you can cheeses,
I'm put it from
sausage. And they just start setting up their shops all along there and sell all sorts of stuff. So it's a fun time. And at night, that's when a lot of the light is a lot of fun to shoot in some of these alleyways, especially if they got wet along the way. You can get some fun pictures.
Is this rush hour?
Yeah. Little outdoor cafes. The Sword was our base, but we took a day trip to Orange. You almost feel like you're in Italy in some of these towns along there. They've got mini coliseums, half coliseum here in Orange. And they even have a art trail, a smaller version of it in this town.
I see you got a little child down there playing in blue suit.
I did. That was actually a cell phone shot, that one with the boy running across there. We also took a day trip to Avignon, the one that the Sur le Pont d'Avignon, the song, that the children's song that they sing.
Beautiful cathedral there. Woo!
The Avignon, one of the unique things about Avignon is there was a period of time when the popes actually lived not in Rome, but in Avignon, and there's the Palace of the Popes there, which we toured, and it was also a very unique place. And we went up to the top of that, and you'll see some pictures from up near the top of that as well. Once Zoom catches up.
I think Jeff wanted me to talk about this one. I entered it, I believe it was last year, in a competition, Shadows. So I was standing on top of a bridge, and I noticed the shadows of people were very strong as they walked through. And I began to take photographs, but I didn't want anything touching. You know how it is. You need to have things to where you can tell their features a little bit better, separation in legs and hands and that sort of thing. And so I took this photograph, high key. Like I said, I don't mind things being blown completely out or blocked up at all. It doesn't bother me a bit. But I realize for competitions, that's not something that you normally would do. But anyway, I decided once I started processing it that I wanted the shadows to be the subject instead of the people themselves. And so I flipped it and come up with this image.
Did you hear bells in churches?
Oh, yeah. From the Third of the Sword, we went south to Le Beau, which was also a little town, as always, on a cliff. In this case, a white cliff. This was where the Van Gogh exhibit was as well. So we spent some time there first, although we've got a few pictures of that at the end, and then wandered the town and ate lunch there.
this photograph was pretty hard to take because of that building in the center there. It was hard to get the buildings in alignment. So I had to work that quite a bit, not in Photoshop, but just different, walking around and trying to figure out how to get everything straight. With the path on one side was going up and the other one was going down, and then the building in the center was off-centered. It was a mess. But anyways, there you have it.
That was what the town looked like from below. And this was from the Van Gogh exhibit, which was it was a wonderful experience. They would all the various paintings of Van Gogh would be displayed on. This was a quarry, a rock quarry, and so they had video displays on all of the rocks, and they'd go through a set of their pictures while playing some great music at the same time. So it was a fun experience.
Where was that?
That was in a town called Les Beaux. Arles was the city that Phyllis got stuck driving in. They also have a Colosseum, a smaller version of the Roman Colosseum in Rome, but you can see it's a good size. Rome kind of controlled that area for a long period of time. It's a concept of framing.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of fun play of shadows along the as you walk around the Colosseum, all the rock structures.
What an engineering feat.
I know it.
Still in use at the Brave Stadium.
Yeah, that's true.
What's that?
He said still in use at the Brave Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Cats must be one of the favorite animals around there because there were cats everywhere. While we were at Arles, there happened to be a photography exhibit going on at that point in time. So we walked in and visited with a number of the photographers there. They couldn't speak much English there, and we couldn't speak much French, but we were able to enjoy their photography and at least nod and say Belle or Beau, beautiful to them, some of their pictures. This was from one of the churches. You want to talk about that one?
Looks like a two-car garage.
Yeah.
Definitely to talk about this one. It's one of the one of the things I like to do is just like, again, unusual perspectives. And so it took me a little while to work this out to where all of the lines, the framing of the windows and the door would be aligned up. And then if you line that up, then something else goes AWOL on you. And that's okay as long as it works in composition. So you notice that the doorway is kind of in the corner and is slanted, but the top is straight with the windows. And then you've got the stairwell going down, and I like trying to do that sort of thing. I like things kind of out of joint. There is absolutely a time and place that all of your lines should be straight, churches and that sort of thing. When you're doing architectural things, I think they should be straight, but then there's that off time that I think it's perfectly fine to have everything out of kilter. And I like to try to find that. I will try to find a high place and shoot down on rooftops and some of these old ancient towns, just because of all those crazy lines. And I don't know if there's any more of that kind of thing in there, but that's just some of the things I like to do. This photograph here, we were leaving that town that I got stuck in with the car. And I saw the fog, and just, boy, my creative juices just went wild, but we couldn't stay very long. And so I grabbed my camera, it was in my backpack, and I jumped out of the car. And just about the time the shot was, she was coming, facing me, coming on the other side of where I was standing at. And she got right in the perfect place, and I tried to press the shutter, and my memory card was full. So I had to run back to the car and change my memory card, and got back out onto the path and discovered that my battery was dead and it wouldn't let me press the shutter. So I ran back to the car, got my battery and popped it in. And by that time, luckily, I was able to zoom in and get her back. And I don't know that it was a better shot than what was already composed, but I had to take what I got.
From Arles, we headed south. There's in the river valley, there's an area called Camargue, which is known for the white horses. We didn't take any of the photographic tours, but when you see the pictures of the white horses running through the water, you may have seen those in different times. That's taken in that area. The other thing it's famous for are, these are the ahingas, but it's famous for its flamingos. And at certain times of year, it is just completely full of flamingos. This shot was just a fun one of Phyllis's. But you can see them.
It happened to be foggy that day as well, and the water, I don't think, is very deep. And so I didn't have to do anything whatsoever in Photoshop to this, except for just very, very light processing. The fog was there. It made the horizon not existent. And so it was just a very unusual light because it was cloudy that day as well. And and it just made for really nice shooting.
The next place we stayed for a night was X. Phyllis got some good pictures of people along the way in X. I think it's good. I think you had mentioned earlier, you like to take pictures of older people as they're.
This older couple that was all around, I kept seeing them all through the town. And I finally got in front of them and just turned around and fired this shot without them even noticing.
Markets and the quintessential French cafes.
Jeff, what kind of processing do you have on this one?
On the cafe. Actually, that one I just pulled up the color a little bit. Yeah, increased the saturation a little bit to bring out the red umbrellas, but didn't do an awful lot more beyond that. I did have to straighten it a bit as well. But
So no painterly effects at the bottom.
yeah, they did have kind of a painterly effect. I'm not sure. This was the library there. And from there we went down to again to the coast to a town called Cassis. We'll kind of flip through these fairly quickly because I think we're running out of time, but the waters were beautiful. The colors of the buildings, the little sailboats. At that time of year, there weren't many people out in the water, so it was fairly quiet. And dusk was a great time to shoot out there. And we woke up to another little market opening up that next morning. So had some fun wandering around there as well. Next stop, as we drove along the coast, we spent the night in a town called Freyou. Also lots of canals through there. Fun place to get some reflection shots. The next morning, we went on to Antibes, which had a Picasso museum, which we wandered through, and a lot more ships and lavender. It was Halloween. We were were in that town. It was interesting. All the stores, the kids went during the day trick-or-treating from store to store, and each store had candy dishes in it, and it was fun watching them go, the kids wandering down the streets in their costumes. That was kind of fun. At this point, I left to go home, and Phyllis went on to Italy, and one of our daughters was traveling with us. The other one, met them there, and then they spent some time in Montepulciano, which was where my youngest daughter studied Italian on a study abroad course. And so these are some pictures from Montepulciano. And I'll let Phyllis do whatever travelogue from here on, because this is her time.
I'm just going to run through, and if you see something you want me to talk about, I'll be glad to do it. I don't want us to run out of time here, so I'll just let you know when the next town comes up, and if you see something you know, just let me know. Unless I see something I think you might be interested in.
Montepulciano is wine country, so it's known for a special vintage, I guess.
This is an orphanage. The door that's, oh, it hasn't come up yet. That door leads to an orphanage that overlooks the town of Montepulciano, or the valley, I guess you could say. This was the room that my daughters and I shared, looking out over the valley. And the next town is Siena. Early morning. Had a very large piazza. You'll see a few more people in these shots. Not many. Had a very large church. I think I might have put a photograph of the inside of that in there somewhere. This is one that I entered in that's coming up here in a competition for churches last month. Also another vantage point where you climb high, and
There's some cars.
yeah, there's some cars in there. Yeah, Siena's a little bit bigger city, a little bit wider streets there. That's the inside of the church. And the church was absolutely massive, and there was absolutely no way you could, there wasn't a lens wide enough to take that entire church in.
So all of these churches you've done, are they all unlocked? And you just walk in?
Yes,
Yeah, they are.
they stay open. They open fairly early and stay open fairly late, actually. And some of them allow photography, some don't. You just have to be respectful of that. And I mean, very respectful. I made the mistake of taking my lens cap off and they ran me out.
Yeah.
I mean, they literally ran me out. I took my lens cap. No, photography was allowed in one church in France, and I took a lot of photos there. And I turned, and the priest thought I was going to take a photo of him, and I didn't. And I just walked out the door, and he ran after me, speaking French. Hopefully, he wasn't cussing me out in French, but he got in my face. He was, and I didn't know how to tell him I wasn't taking his photograph because I couldn't speak French. I just had to take it and move on.
But most of the churches, you can wander in at any time, you can sit down. A lot of them have classical music playing inside of them when they're not in mass. You do have to be respectful of how you're clothed when you go in. Italian churches, women can't have bare shoulders or I guess certain skirt lengths, but
Right. This is Florence. I don't know if I announced that already, but this is Florence. It's wonderful. Like I said, after a rain, look for reflections. More of an unusual perspectives. This is the Duomo for the backside of it. And Manarola is one of the towns in Cinque Terre, which is 5 small villages linked together mostly by train. And
there is a footpath that actually links all of them as well. A previous time when we were there, we hiked between some of them, talking about being dressed or have the right clothing for. Phyllis had flip-flops on and she was hiking along the edges of these cliffs, which was not a wise idea.
It wasn't wise. I didn't realize that it went along the side of the cliffs. When I started out, and it was very flat and it was nowhere near the cliff. Well, by the time we got started and we got deep into it, suddenly there we were on these cliff edges, climbing around in my flip-flops. And now there is a $5,000 fine if you are caught in flip-flops there on these trails. But this also is on the Mediterranean Sea. Very, very hilly. It will work you to death if you're not in shape and you're just trying to walk from one restaurant down to a store. It will work you to death to get there. So if you decide to travel there, make sure you are in shape. And do not turn your luggage loose or it will end up into the Mediterranean Sea. As you can see there, they are literally on a cliff, and where we stayed at was at the very, very top of that rock. And they don't have cars in that city whatsoever, that little village. You have to walk. And
Monterosa.
This is Monterosa. It's the very first or the very last village, I guess it would be, which depending on the direction you're going. It was, hasn't come up yet. It was stormy. So the ocean was very angry, crashing against those rocks there. The next one coming up, you'll see that it's where the path starts and along the cliff edge, and it has railings at that point, no big deal. And you don't get too terribly far, they're gone. And you're just climbing on a very narrow edge at times. This was a sunset, and I was taking the sunset from the sun was setting behind, in front of me, and I just happened to turn around and like what I saw behind me better. Coming up is Vernazza. I did that. And I could not get away without having some laundry. If you follow me on Facebook or Instagram, you will know that that is absolutely one of my favorite things to shoot, because I grew up with my mother hanging laundry as a little child, and something about that just always warms my heart when I see it, and I can't resist shooting it when I see it. I look for it everywhere I go. I've got thousands probably of photographs of the laundry, and all different shapes, forms, and sizes. But I say shoot what you love. Doesn't matter if anybody else likes it or not. It's what you enjoy doing. So that's what I do. Oh, I think I'm in front of it here. I'm trying to get through these quicker. I know we're probably just about out of time here. We've actually been to this area twice, to Quatera, and I believe I have another photograph of that lady from a previous trip. She sits in that window all the time.
They got a lot of strings there for laundry.
Yeah. Rio Maggiore. November is their rainy season, beginning of their rainy season. See the fishermen there on the rock. There's no way that I would walk down there as slick as that is, but he grew up in that little village, and he had no problem walking down there. This was just before a tour bus came, or actually just after it left. They swarmed that area, and I had to be patient and just wait for them to leave. And when they left, it was completely empty. They just come in for about 15 minutes, they snap, snap, snap with their cell phone, and they leave. But they're very pushy. In Rome, and this is the end when we get to this, the Colosseum, some of the old ancient ruins there in Rome. And it's trying to catch up here, sorry about that. The Colosseum, rainy day. Usually that Colosseum is jammed full of people with buses lining it, and November is a great time to be there.
Lots and lots of history there.
Yeah, these are old ancient ruins. This was a reflection that I also flipped. I liked it better this way. I can't remember the name of that building, but it is their version of the Unknown Soldier. This was the center of a hotel. I have no idea the name of it. I just happened on it walking through. And I believe this is the last photograph of the Parthenon. And I squatted down and just, there you go. That was a complete stranger. That's it, guys. Hope we didn't worry you too bad. It was long.
Well, Jeff and Phyllis, I thoroughly enjoyed the show. I like how you used a different font in between the cities. That kind of added a nice exotic flavor to it. But I noticed in your slideshow, you had one slide that was pretty blue, and then you had a next one that was very heavy yellow, and then you had the next one that was black and white. And I really liked how you ran the colors through that. And Phyllis, I can honestly say you're the type of lady who's always looking for the angles.
For sure.
But thanks again to you both.
Mhm,
I
thank
lost.
you.
It was what I had hoped it was going to be. That was great. Thank you. What it did see it was that all the people in the U.S. need to go overseas for a little while anyway to see how good we really have got it. Because I was in Cyprus and I got into one of those little villages and like you did, I had to back out of it. But it's just a whole different,
It's a different world.
different world, totally different world. But thank you. It was great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I apologize for the delay in Zoom. It just would hit the button and it wouldn't come up.
If that's our biggest problem, we got it made.
Really, really.
All right. Well, thank you.
Well,
Thank
so
you.
are you still answering questions?
Sure,
Yes,
if you
I
have
am,
them.
sure.
Okay, so you talked about trying to, well, thrown in there with being respectful was also trying to participate in the travel rather than be a tourist. So some of that involves dress and mannerisms, right? We in America wear our Adidas t-shirts and our pink tennis shoes roaming around. And what kind of norm would you expect on a European or Italian kind of trip?
The ladies generally like to dress in dark clothing for whatever reason. It doesn't mean they're not, or at least in France, I noticed that they tend to wear a lot of browns or blacks or darker colors. My hair stood out like a sore thumb with it being blonde. I stood out as an American. There was no covering it up. It didn't matter if I didn't speak or if I spoke or I said, it didn't matter. I would see them come by and they go, oh, American, just so we stick out. I don't know how they know it. I even asked some friends of ours that actually live in Montepulciano. I said, what? How can you tell that we are American? And they said, most Americans have straight teeth. They all get braces and they have these huge smiles and straight teeth, where in Europe, they're not so much about appearances like that. They don't care if their teeth is straight, and their hair is generally dark and olive complected, and somehow or another they just know. Yeah, in churches and that sort of thing, you have to, the women cannot go in with their shoulders showing. They have to have a shawl, sweater, or sleeves of some sort. And you have to have on something that covers your knees. So you just have to read up on the different things for each country. Some of the things are being very insulting to them if you did it. And you just have to be very respectful. I know in France, they weren't as warm to Americans for sure as they are in Italy. Italy is much friendlier. And even though France is a neighboring country, they're just not as friendly. Some were, most weren't. I don't know if I answered your question, but.
But yeah, as far as dress, yeah, it was just fairly casual, and you try not to stand out too much. Of course, if you're walking around with a big camera around your neck,
Yeah,
you're
you
a tourist
do.
anyway. But yeah, if you dress fairly casual, fairly plain colors, you don't stand out too much, and people don't take as much notice of you if you're out there shooting.
I mean, they wear jeans and that sort of thing. In the cities, it's pretty much just like it is here. If you get into smaller villages, they're a little bit more superstitious, I guess, and kind of look at you a little different, like, what are you doing here, kind of thing. Just like you would see in the mountains or hills here, if somebody unusual would comes in. It's pretty much the same.
And most places in Europe, if you learn to say a few words in their language, they really appreciate it. You don't have to be able to know how to speak fluently, but if you can say hello and you can say thank you and just a few basic words, they're a lot more welcoming.
And luckily, I'm pretty fluent in Italian, so he goes with us, let her have the floor and speak for us, and we just sit quiet.
You're fading away.
Can't hear you.
I was just saying that our daughter speaks fluent Italian, so whenever we go to Italy, she pretty well guides us around and speaks to everybody, and we get around, pretty good that way with her. So.
Well, anybody get more questions there?
Okay, well, thank you.
Phyllis, Jeff, thank you so much.
Well, thank
You're
you.
quite welcome.
See y'all next time.
All right.
Yeah, next time you go with us.
You
I
getting
tell
up
you
a
what,
tour?
one thing about that, it did make me want to go. I mean, I've traveled a whole lot over there, but I'd like to do it again.
You gotta be able to do some walking.
Yeah.
Lots of places to go, lots of places to see there.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
When I was in France, the big cities, the French were rude, but you got out in the smaller towns, they were nicer, it seemed.
That's
That was
true.
a long time ago, though.
Yeah. Some were good, some were not, but it's kind of like that here too. You get that just about anywhere.
You do get looked funny at in Powder Springs and Smyrna.
You might.
If you want a really friendly place to go, try Ireland.
Ireland is the best for friendliness. They're absolutely wonderful. Absolutely the friendliest place we've ever been is Ireland. They're much more friendly, I think, than the US.
It's all that beer.
I guess the Guinness is local, right?
Yeah, Ireland's a great place.
Well, I'm gonna pack it up, guys.
All right.
All right, we'll see
See
you
y'all
guys
next
later.
time.
All righty, bye-bye, everybody.
Nice job. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thanks again.